Hey guys, welcome back to Ripestories. What would you do if an entitled Karen neighbor rear-ended your car on purpose just to teach you a lesson? This Karen thought that she is immune to any sort of consequences. Let's dive right into the video to find out what happened. Aside from my neighbor Karen, the neighborhood I live in is nice and quiet. I don't have issues or fight with other people, but Karen seems to have some dead-set reason to want to start problems with me. The two of us have a bit of a grudge, and it stems from multiple instances of fighting and arguing about much more minor things. One example is that she not only allowed but encouraged her dog to go into my yard to do his business. I had to install a new fence just to get her to stop doing that, and it caused her to yell at me for being against animal rights and antisocial because not too many people have fences here. Another issue was that she would constantly be screaming out her windows at my kids while they were playing on our lawn, telling them that they were being loud and disruptive and had to go back inside instead. My kids were terrified of this lady, and I had to be outside with them so they could play without worrying about her. Despite all those problems, I remained as calm and cool as possible, trying to ignore her antics. This time though, she managed to not only cross the line with making me angry, but also put several lives in danger because of her actions. So I live about 5 blocks from the kids' school, and when the weather is not great, I tend to just drive them. It was never an issue, but this year Karen's kids started at the same school and she also has a tendency to drive. Now, due to it being residential and then a very busy school zone, I drive slow and carefully as I am meant to. Since the start of the year, on the bad weather days, I have noticed Karen's tailgating me and honking at me. Once winter hit and the driving was more of a daily thing, it was when it started to go from bad to worse. She was honking and shouting out the window at me for driving too slow. Keep in mind I was going the speed limit for a school zone. I was also stopping at stop signs and for children crossing the street. Two things that Karen also wanted to fight with me about. The tailgating was making me nervous, especially because it was going to start getting icy soon, and one bad braking could cause an accident. I also felt like she was leaving when she did intentionally just to drive behind me. That is really the only explanation for her always ending up right behind me, which, considering how mad it made her, I don't know why she did it aside from wanting to just start a fight. Or that she's just totally insane could be another reason. Well, anyway, this day I just had enough and decided to pull over on the side of the road to let her safely go around me. She did not do that though, and instead decided to get out of her car to come confront me. She went on a total rampage about how I make her and her kid late every single day because I drive too slowly. First of all, I know that is wrong because her kid is getting there at the same time as mine, and that's about 15 minutes early already. Buses are still rolling in, so I know that nobody is late because of me driving safely. She went on for a while until I just closed the window, locked the doors and ignored her. She got back in her car and I was waiting for her to just go. Well, she did go, and her response was to intentionally rear-end my parked car. Having a smug look on her face when I opened my window again told me one last thing, that if I didn't drive faster, I was going to get used to the back of my car being so messed up. Now I have insurance, so the rear end on its own was not the biggest issue. The fact that she did it on purpose and my kids were in the car infuriated me beyond belief though. She finally got me angry, and I was not gonna just report it to my insurance. Without any proof either, the police were not gonna do a damn thing about it. And if you wanna know why I didn't just put my kids on a bus to avoid Karen, I have an answer to that possible person in the comments. The school had a rule that if you lived within a certain distance of the school, the bus would not stop there. I was so close and within that range as was Karen, so the options were either to walk or to drive. And in my state, winter can get really bad and cold, so I was not gonna force my kids to walk just because of Karen. Plus, I was a little scared she might try and jump the curb and hit us or something. Really, who knows with this woman? I opted for trying to get some revenge and see if I could get her doing something else on camera for a police report. I got a dash cam and actually two, so I could have one that also worked by being hooked to the back of my car. With these, I was able to see Karen cursing and honking at me for just obeying the law. What I didn't expect was to catch her doing something illegal and putting lives in danger. Once we got onto the street the school is located on, there's just one lane of traffic going in each direction. I guess she did not like that I was once again waiting at a crosswalk for kids and parents to cross the street, and she went around me. Meaning that she went into the lane with oncoming traffic and almost hit the people in the crosswalk. The crossing guard was now getting into a fight with her as well, and Karen did not care about putting lives in danger or any of the other students. She apparently had better things to do and just wanted to drop her kids off fast. "The other kids can wait for mine," was one of the many things she said to try and justify herself. Then she gave everybody the finger and just drove off. I got all of it on my dashcam. I filed a police report for the fact that she not only was committing daily road rage, but also breaking the law. With that evidence, I was also sending her papers via my lawyer, demanding the fees for my car be paid. I ended up paying out of pocket to fix it, knowing I might get her to pay me in the end, because I did not want my premiums going up. Well, the first thing I learned was that she had been banned from the school. She was not allowed within a certain distance of it, so she had to stop driving her son altogether and get him in a carpool with one of his friends. They took what she did beyond seriously. The much better karma was that the police and a judge were not impressed by Karen's actions and putting kids in danger. I figured she would lose her license, but it actually went further than that even. She was given so many counts of reckless driving from my videos that she actually ended up behind bars for a while on top of everything else. Everything else being that she was forced to pay me back the money, lost her license, and was even at risk of losing her kids. She wanted to teach me a lesson about driving, but in the end she was the one that got taught a lesson. The lesson being that you can only mess with a person so much before they snap, and then you might not want to know what they do. And yeah guys, don't turn off the video just yet, because the next one is a super satisfying homeowner association story. And by the way, if you've enjoyed the video so far, please don't forget to give me a like, because that helps me tremendously. So this one is titled, "Am I the a-hole for telling my HOA that they had just paid all my legal fees after they tried to make me remove my car from my own driveway?" So for context, I've lived in my neighborhood for 15 years. It is a nice suburban area with well-maintained homes and a relatively reasonable HOA, at least that's what I thought until recently. I've always followed the rules, kept my lawn cut, and never had any issues with the HOA board. My car situation is pretty simple. I own a 1989 Toyota Supra Turbo that I've had since college. It is my pride and joy, completely stock, meticulously maintained, and in excellent condition. I keep it spotlessly clean, and while it is older, there's absolutely no rust, dents, or any cosmetic issues. I drive it regularly, especially on weekends when the weather is nice. About 6 months ago, I received my first notice from the HOA stating that my car was too old to be parked in the driveway and that I needed to either garage it or remove it from my property. I was shocked. There was nothing in the bylaws specifying a maximum vehicle age, only that cars needed to be in good condition, which mine absolutely was. I responded with a polite email explaining that my car was well maintained and asking them to point out which specific bylaw I was violating. Instead of a reasonable response, I got a second, more strongly worded notice 2 weeks later, threatening fines if I didn't comply within 30 days. At this point, I decided to take a more thorough look at our HOA bylaws. The section on vehicles only stated that vehicles must be in good working order, regularly maintained without visible damage, rust or disrepair, and nothing about age. I took photos of my car from all angles to document its condition and sent another email with the photos attached, again asking which specific rule I was violating. The response I received was infuriating. The HOA president, who had only been elected 3 months prior, wrote back saying that the board determined that vehicles over 15 years old detract from neighborhood aesthetics, and that my continued defiance would result in immediate fines. When I pointed out that there was no such rule in the bylaws, he claimed that they were enforcing the spirit of the regulations. Well, that is when I decided to fight back. I consulted with a lawyer who specialized in HOA disputes, and he confirmed what I already knew. They could not enforce rules that did not even exist, and they certainly could not make up new interpretations without a proper amendment process, which required homeowner notification and voting. When the first fine notice of $100 arrived in my mailbox, my lawyer sent a cease and desist letter. Rather than backing down, the HOA escalated by sending a notice that they would be placing a lien on my property if I did not pay the accumulated fines, which had mysteriously grown to $350 within 14 days. My lawyer advised me to file for an injunction and challenge them in court. The day of the hearing finally arrived 3 months after all this started. I was nervous but confident in my position. The HOA sent their lawyer and the board president, clearly expecting an easy win, but they were wrong. The judge listened to both sides and then asked the HOA's lawyer one simple question. Can you show me where in the bylaws it states a maximum age for vehicles? When they couldn't and tried to argue about implied standards and board discretion, the judge was not having it. Not only did the judge rule in my favor, but he ordered a full audit of the HOA's enforcement practices after my lawyer presented evidence that they had been selectively enforcing various non-existent rules against other homeowners too. The cherry on top was when he ordered them to pay my legal fees, which had amounted to nearly $3,000. When I got home that day, I parked my Supra right in the middle of the driveway and washed it, making sure it gleamed in the sun. Several neighbors came by to congratulate me. Turns out I was not the only one who had been dealing with the HOA's overreach. The fallout has been significant. 3 board members, including the president, resigned within a week. The HOA management company was replaced and a special meeting was called to review and clarify all bylaws. I have since been asked to join the new board to help prevent similar situations in the future. So Reddit, am I the a-hole here for taking this all the way to court instead of just parking my car in the garage or giving in to keep the peace? And yeah guys, I'm curious, if you would have been in an OP situation, would you have done the same, or would you have just kept the peace, as he called it, and basically shut up? Let me know in the comments. Also some extra info, yes, I do have a garage, but I use it as a workshop for my hobbies. Also, the previous board president actually had a 2021 Corvette that he often parked on the street, which is against actual HOA rules. Comment number 1 said, my neighbor had a similar issue with our HOA trying to force him to remove his project car from his garage, which they have no right to regulate inside your home. These power-hungry board members sometimes need a legal reminder of what their actual authority is. Comment number 2, you are the a-hole and your shiny car is not worth the drama. The HOA might have overstepped, but did you really need to go scorched earth over where you park your midlife crisis mobile? You could have compromised by just using your perfectly good garage temporarily while working towards a reasonable solution. Instead, you spent $3,000 on legal fees, forced people to resign, and turned the entire neighborhood upside down because you wanted to make a point. Well, congratulations on winning. I hope it was worth creating enemies out of all your neighbors who now have to deal with the fallout of your automotive temper tantrum. Sometimes being technically right does not make you less of an a-hole. Also, you have probably tanked your home value more with this neighborhood feud than whatever aesthetic damage your precious Supra could possibly have caused. Comment number 3, not the a-hole, your story actually gave me flashbacks to my own HOA nightmare that lasted 3 years. For context, I moved into my subdivision back in 2015 with my wife and 2 kids. It seemed like paradise, good schools, nice neighbors, and well-maintained common areas. The HOA fees were reasonable at $250 per quarter, and the rules seemed sensible. But boy was I wrong. Everything was fine for the first year, and then we had what I call the Great Board Coup of 2016. The old board members, mostly reasonable folks, were replaced by what I can only describe as suburban dictators, led by a retired corporate executive I will call Mr. Power Trip. This guy had apparently been searching his entire life for a tiny kingdom to rule, and our 78-home community became his fiefdom. The first sign of trouble came when I decided to repaint my front door. The bylaws clearly stated that homeowners could choose from a list of 12 approved colors. I picked one called Harbor Blue and spent a Saturday afternoon painting. 3 days later, I found a violation notice taped to my mailbox claiming I had used an unapproved color. I immediately checked the bylaws and confirmed that Harbor Blue was indeed on the approved list and sent a polite email to the board with a photo of my door and the relevant bylaws section. Instead of acknowledging the mistake, I received a response stating that the shade of Harbor Blue you used appears darker than the approved shade, and I had 14 days to repaint it. This made absolutely no sense. The bylaws did not specify shades, just the color names from a specific brand's palette. I decided to push back and sent another email requesting the exact specifications of the so-called correct Harbor Blue. No response for 2 weeks, and then another violation notice with a $50 fine. This pattern continued until I had accumulated $250 in fines for a perfectly compliant door color. That is when I realized this was not about rules, it was about power. Around this time I started talking to my neighbors and discovered I was not alone. One family had been fined because their basketball hoop, which was permitted in the bylaws, was 2 inches too close to the sidewalk. Another one got cited because their garbage can was visible from the street for more than 12 hours after collection. The violation notice was issued just 14 hours after trash pickup. The most absurd case was my neighbor down the street, who received a violation notice for excessive holiday decorations in December. Their crime? Having both a wreath and string lights. The bylaws had no specific limitation on holiday decorations whatsoever. I decided we needed to organize. I created a private Facebook group for homeowners and invited everyone except known board members and their close allies. Within a week, we had 52 members, all sharing similar stories of petty enforcement and arbitrary fines. One member, a paralegal, pointed out that our bylaws required the board to hold open meetings quarterly and to properly notify all homeowners. They had not held a public meeting in over 18 months, instead making decisions in private executive sessions. This was our opening. I drafted a letter citing this violation and had 45 homeowners sign it, demanding an open meeting within 30 days as required by our bylaws. We sent it certified mail to each board member. The response was immediate and hostile. Mr. Powertrip called me personally. "I received your little petition," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're really stirring up trouble over nothing." "It's not a petition," I replied calmly. "It's a formal notice of bylaw violation. The same kind that you've been so fond of issuing. Listen, you have no idea what goes into running this community. We make these rules for everyone's benefit," he said. "Well, that may be true, but you're required to follow the bylaws just like everyone else. That includes open meetings." He sighed dramatically and said, "Fine, we will have your meeting, but this little rebellion of yours is not gonna change anything." They scheduled a meeting for a Tuesday at 2 p.m. when most homeowners would be at work. I took the day off and encouraged others to do the same, and surprisingly, 37 homeowners showed up. The meeting was tense. Mr. Powertrip attempted to rush through the agenda, but we came prepared. During the open comments section, each one of us took turns addressing specific instances of selective enforcement and arbitrary rule interpretation. The board looked increasingly uncomfortable as homeowner after homeowner stood up with documentation of inconsistent enforcement. Then, when my turn came, I presented a folder with photos of every door in the neighborhood, including 4 others painted harbor blue, all without violations. I also revealed that Mr. Powertrip's next-door neighbor had installed an unauthorized pergola that was never cited, despite being a clear violation of the architectural guidelines. This is clearly not about following rules, I concluded. It is about selectively enforcing them against people that you don't like. The meeting ended with the board promising to review our concerns, but nothing changed. In fact, the enforcement got worse. I received 2 more violations in the next month, one for lawn ornaments, a small garden gnome my daughter had painted, and another one for unkempt landscaping during a week that I was away on business. That is when I decided to go nuclear. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in HOA disputes and explained the situation. 8 of us pooled money for the retainer. Our lawyer sent a demand letter outlining all the bylaw violations committed by the board and demanding 3 things: immediate cessation of all fines until a fair enforcement policy was established, as well as removal of all current violations and associated fines. Number 3, a special election for new board members under the supervision of a neutral third party. The board's response: they hired their own lawyer with HOA funds, aka our money, and rejected our demands. So we filed suit in county court, and the discovery phase was eye-opening. We had found out that they had been deliberately targeting certain homeowners while ignoring violations by friends and allies. One particularly damning email from Mr. Powertrip stated, "We need to make examples of the troublemakers. Start with the guy with the blue door." The case dragged on for over a year, draining both sides' finances. The turning point came when we learned the board had been misappropriating funds too. They had been using HOA money for emergency repairs to common areas that just happened to be performed by a landscaping company owned by Mr. Powertrip's son-in-law at rates 40% above market value. When this came to light, their lawyer immediately pushed for a settlement. The terms were everything we wanted. All current board members would resign, all outstanding fines would be nullified, new elections would be held with an independent monitor, and the HOA would cover our legal fees, around $22,000. The best part? As part of the settlement, we added a bylaw amendment requiring any future rule changes to be approved by 2/3 of all homeowners and not just the board. We also added specific language prohibiting selective enforcement. The new board was elected 3 months later. I did not run because I'd had enough HOA politics to last a lifetime, but 3 members of our homeowner group did. The atmosphere in the neighborhood changed immediately. The focus shifted to actual community improvements rather than nitpicking violations. Oh, and if you're curious, my blue door? It is still there, exactly as I painted it 5 years ago. Every time I come home, it reminds me that standing up to petty tyrants is always worth it, even when it is hard. And yeah, your story resonated with me because you did exactly what more homeowners need to do: fight back with the actual rules and not just emotion. HOAs only have the power we give them through our bylaws. When they overreach, they need to be reminded of that, sometimes through legal means. Congrats on your victory, and enjoy that beautiful Supra in your driveway where it belongs. And yeah guys, please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you again tomorrow.